are from a study that my colleague Dr. Eby and I are actually involved in. It's a multi-site, large-scale longitudinal study of 3,000 older drivers at enrollment. And we asked them about how they learned about their technologies. And what we found was that over half really just tried to figure it out themselves. They didn't have any kind of formal training, and very few looked at the manual, very few got training from the dealer, and so forth. So that suggests there's a real opportunity for us to improve our training initiatives, and Dr. Yu will be talking more about that. So then the second part of the needs assessment was the community engagement piece. And again, this was really intended to go out and actually talk to older adults and hear their perspectives and how they talked about their feelings and their thoughts. I don't have a lot of time to talk about this piece, but essentially we had a two-part process to collect qualitative data from these older adults. And so we started out with something that we call nominal groups, and that's a way to really identify salient issues, but not to really spend much time delving too deeply in those issues. And so then we had two nominal groups, one focusing on identifying the benefits of connected and automated vehicles, and then one focusing on the barriers. And then we followed up with each of these groups to delve more deeply into what people meant by benefits and barriers. So we wanted kind of a more nuanced view of their thinking. So in terms of the themes that came out of the focus groups on benefits, you can see here the primary benefits were that calves can help with accident prevention. They can help people feel safe even when they're experiencing physical limitations, can allow people to drive anytime, can help with fuel efficiency, and also can help people lower their anxiety level just in terms of getting around in the community safely. In terms of the barriers that kind of came out and were explored about affordability issues. And there was also a real reluctance to give up driving or controlling the car. And this is something that has been found in studies that older adults in particular are more hesitant to give up driving something that they've done over a long period of time over the course of their lives, unlike younger people who have less experience driving and maybe aren't so wedded to that activity where they have to control the car themselves. There was also concern that technology would not be user-friendly enough so that they could use it independently. And then many adults were just intimidated by the technology in general. So what we did was we took the findings from the needs assessment, the literature review, and the community engagement, and we presented those findings to the students in the class and engaged in discussion about those. And then the students in the class undertook a classroom project. So as I mentioned, this was a class on human-centered design. And, So their classroom project incorporated using human-centered design as a way to come up with different ideas that could help older adults and their caregivers or their family members or friends so that they were better able to take advantage of CAV technology. So the class was divided into 3 teams, and all of the projects that were done, each of the teams came up with some sort of smartphone app that could be used by either older adults or their informal caregivers to help facilitate their use of CAVs. And as I mentioned, the principles of human-centered design were incorporated into the classroom project. And so essentially, they include continuing to get input from older adults themselves as they went through this process of testing and refining and so forth. So in this class, they didn't actually develop the technology, but they came up with the ideas. And at every step of the way, it was really important for them to really think about older adults and their perspectives, their needs, their preferences, and so forth. So the students actually went out on their own in addition to what the research team did and talked with older adults in the community. So the 3 projects are shown here on the screen. So Team 1 posed the idea of how might we design a GPS tracking companion app to assist caregivers in monitoring the location of seniors with cognitive impairment while riding in autonomous vehicles. So the idea here was that it's not, the app is not so much for the older adult themselves, but for informal caregivers so that they can feel comfortable that their care recipient can be out and about and that they actually know where they are and know things are okay. So the idea for the second team was improving the in-vehicle experience to help older adults and their caregivers feel connected during an emergency and provide trouble-free navigation. And then the third team came up with the idea of navigating in the dark, designing autonomous driving features to assist visually impaired older adults. And I wish I had more time to talk about their projects because they were really fascinating. And they did present all of their work at a poster session, as I mentioned, at the University of Michigan this past year. And so I encourage all of you to go to the CCAT website.
We can incorporate, we can consider the needs of this particular group. As Dr. Moore mentioned, his group is getting larger and larger in percentage because of the aging problem in the nation. Anyway, so I have a few slides just to as a opener, and I will introduce other 2 researchers, and Claudia, that's Claudia, and also Renee. Claudia is a PhD candidate, and Renee is a professional working in the private sector. And both of them are in the research team in Akron. And all right, so I will make it quick. We all know, right, the safety features are more and more, I mean, we're talking about, I think everybody's, knowledge is good on the different levels. Level 2, level 3 features are gradually, more and more actually implemented in newer vehicles. But all of the features, as you can see, that you can turn it on, turn it off, and some are just for, warning purposes, but others actually physically engage. For example, lane tracking, right? I mean, driving lane tracking features, or automatic braking if you go too fast reaching vehicles in front. Those probably all those reasons are confusing. Okay, that's why older drivers are they feel the lack of control and understanding, so they kind of shy away from this, and that's not a good purpose. And of course, for the benefits, okay, I mean, all those different features is to increase not only crash avoidance and control, but also bystanders, okay, the cyclists, motorists, pedestrians, and also a kind of awareness to make the driver be more aware of things going ahead of the vehicles or on the both sides of the vehicles. So those are nice features. That's how we incorporate all those different features in the survey. And of course, you can find the different features from the different, different sources, okay, manual or this AARP workshops, and they conduct a lot of workshops. And so based on that, we developed the questionnaire, and then we actually engaged the older drivers in the training. And so for that, I'm going to invite Renee to come up to discuss the survey, okay, the design and the use of the survey. Okay, come on, Renee. This is the pointer from you.
I'll probably just use the computer. Thank you. So we went to a number of senior centers, cultural centers, things like that to find our audience. The audiences ranged from 4 people to 30 people, and it was not hard to be invited to these places to give the education for the older adults. One email I sent, someone said, "Yes, please tell me how to use my car, I'm afraid of it." So that was great. Generally, the people attending the sessions, it was between bingo and lunch. So they were there anyway. And I could hear them talking to each other as we'd give them the before survey saying, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't want the car to drive me. I like to drive the car. I'm afraid of everything. I turn everything off as soon as I can." And then while we'd give the presentation, I could see their eyes light up, and I can see understanding happening throughout the presentation. We did have some people who from the beginning all the way through the end, "Nope, not going to do it. I want to turn all these off. How do I turn all these off? How do I make sure that I never use any of these ever again?" And then other people by the end of the presentation were very interested and looking forward to trying out the features that they had. And we'll talk about the data for that. So our presentation, we gave a little bit of an introduction about what we're doing and why. And we gave them before surveys, which I'll show you there in a little bit. And then we showed all the features with icons and the name and talked about every single one that we had. We would say, we talk about all of them, for this feature, this is what happens. And they appreciated learning, is this an alert? Is this an assist? Or is this a completely do for me? So being clear about what category that fell into was very helpful for them. And we also categorized the features by the intended purpose. So as you'll see here, we have all these features for crash avoidance and mitigation to help them navigate through situations safely. And some things we had on there, which technically are advanced technology, driverless features, such as traction control, anti-lock brake system. These are things they already had, and they did not know that these were technologies to assist them. So starting on that basis, that you're already using things, whether you realize it or not, helped sort of open the door to understanding. And then on every group, we had at least one video that they could watch, and we found these videos on manufacturers' websites, on YouTube, various places, which I'll show you those, so that they could watch actual videos. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to do a video for every single feature, but often just telling them what the feature does and how they would experience it was helpful. So these were the braking and rollover. Sometimes the features were repeated on the page just so they knew that those features also contributed to the particular topic. And every time you'd see the orange box was when we could watch a video to show them how to use those. Most were very receptive. They loved the lane assist and the blind spot warning. They did not love the automatic parking. That was the highest level of do for them feature that we showed them. I do want to show you one of the videos so you can get an example of that. So first I have to, let's just check. Yes, okay, let me press go.
The rear cross traffic alert helps alert the driver with visual and audible warnings of a vehicle approaching from the side when backing out of a parking space. Our CTA operates when the shift lever is in the reverse position and the vehicle speed is less than approximately 5 miles per hour.
Thank you.
Our CTA uses radar sensors located on both sides of the vehicle near the rear bumper to help detect other vehicles approaching from the right or left of the vehicle. The radar sensors can detect an approaching vehicle up to approximately 66 feet away. If the radar detects an approaching vehicle from the side, a chime sounds and the side indicator light on the side of the approaching vehicle flashes. There may be instances when you want to turn the rear cross traffic alert system off. To enable or disable the system, use these controls to select settings. Driver assistance. Then rear cross traffic alert to toggle the system on or off. Please see your owner's manual for important safety information, system limitations, and additional operating and feature information.
69.
My favorite way of describing that feature was to start with, have you ever been to Walmart in December for Christmas shopping season and you just want to leave? Yes, everyone can identify with trying to back out of that parking spot when everyone is there for shopping. So identifying with those actual situations that they see was really helpful. Again, this is just showing you the various groupings of the features that we had. Hill Assist was new to most people. They weren't sure if this was already happening with their vehicle or if they needed to turn it on or off, but they found that interesting. And then, like I mentioned, the automatic parking, not a fan of that, but almost all of them, if they had a newer car, used the backup camera feature. So they were familiar with that. And then again, realizing that this is a feature to assist their driving, they were appreciative of that. We showed them other places that they could learn more if they wanted to keep engaging this. AARP, and one of my favorite sites was mycardoeswhat.org that had many videos on it. And we also showed them you could go to your manufacturer's website. We learned a lot in the process of this. Like one intention was for us to give them this presentation and they could click on the icons here and take them right to the sites, but most of them don't have emails or wouldn't give them, so that was not applicable. For the people that we surveyed, a large percentage of them were 70 and above. There was a handful of people in the sessions that didn't drive. Sometimes they told us that during the survey, and sometimes they told us after the survey, both before and after. We only had one person under 50, 0 people between 50 and 55, and then smaller numbers. The second to the 70 and over was 66 through 70. Most of the participants were female, some were male. That was just how the people attended the sessions. We did most of this in Northeast Ohio, and we have various different locations within the counties to show you the coverage here. We do have more on the way. We have a few more scheduled to obtain more information, get a larger data sample. So for this survey, we had 2, and again, like I said, we learned a lot. Originally, we had a before and after survey that looked very similar. We asked the same things in the beginning on the first page of every survey because we didn't have their names associated with it. So we wanted to know, for example, if someone under 50 that took 1 trip per week answered one way in the before survey, how they answered in the after survey. But it turns out they got really annoyed with having to answer these questions twice. And they also insisted that the surveys were the exact same, and I tried to point out very minor differences, and they did not care for that. Also, those surveys were 39 pages long, and they hated that. I also didn't, we had to wait for the last person to get done with the before survey before I could start the presentation. So they were very annoyed with that. So we moved we were having them answer questions about every single feature, and they would read the question, even though it was the same for every time. They would read that whole question and read all the answers and then make a mark and then go to the next one. So then we moved to a grid system where we'd have the features, and then they could put a check mark in a column. Still too long, still didn't enjoy that. So then we started grouping the features together and asking the one question for example, all of the crash avoidance and mitigation features, which presented its own challenges. Such as some of them they did use the features, and some of them they did not, so it was hard for them to answer. And then also, we did not say check as many boxes as applicable, but they did. So that was sort of helpful. The intention for the before survey was either you'll have a check in these 4 boxes on the top, or you'll have a check in the bottom. Why aren't you using those features? Sometimes they checked 10 things on this page, which gave us more information. So that worked out. And while in our third iteration, we only asked the demographic questions once. The most of the pages after that did look the same because they had the same features, but the before survey asked, do you currently use these features, and if not, why not? And then afterwards, do you plan to use these features? And if not, why not? So that gave us a lot of information that Claudia will talk about in a few seconds here. And just to get you started, this is the breakdown of the number of trips that people took. So about 10% of the class took only one trip per week. And then about 25% for each of them, a little bit higher, lower, for various different levels of trips. So the point of this is that we had people that traveled a lot, and then people that only traveled once in a while as needed. So it did kind of cover the gamut. And then lastly, for me, even though we received many answers of why they don't use the feature is because they don't have them, you can see many of their cars probably did have those features, with the highest number of cars being manufactured in 2018 and beyond. But we did have some people say they did use all the features all the time, but they had a 1995 Lincoln. So we had a fun time going through the data. And then, as you can also see on the far left, the types of vehicles that were most prominent there were actually Ford and Chevy in Northeast Ohio, older population, so that was not unexpected, but we did have a lot of Honda, Toyota, and various other manufacturers. So again, sort of run the gamut of the different types of vehicles and the features available and the icons and how those look. So next up is Claudia to talk about the data that we received. You can press down, or I just used down.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so as Renee kind of described the categories that we had put the different safety features in, this is what we're going to be looking at the next couple of slides, showing the difference between the before and then the after. So as they're going through these surveys, you know, the top 10 are reasons why they don't use these technologies. So they're seeing all these icons. Oh, they might be saying, I don't use it because I'm afraid to disrupt the electronics. I don't want to learn this. And then towards the bottom, there's one of the choices was, I'm not familiar with it. So that was one they could have selected before and after. And then at the bottom, what we're looking at is that top section that Renee was showing you, reasons why they use it. You know, there's those variations like, oh, I might use it sometimes, or I'm going to try to use it all the time. I would if I could. So that's what we're looking at the bottom. And you can see that those reasons before the survey, that's the green, those are greater than the after, which is what we want. After they get educated in this, their reasons for why they might not use something is, they're fewer of those. So that's great. Also, not familiar. Initially, 50% was marked as they're not familiar with the technologies in the collision prevention mitigation category. After they sat through the workshop, that went down to 12, 13%, okay? Then the like to try, would I possibly like to try it if I could? Before, they were barely 10%, but after learning about it, that went up over 20%, okay? And then similarly, like they plan to, they would probably, those are people that, you know, I'm really going to try to do this. That also increased afterwards. So these next 4 or 5 slides are going to be like this with that category. So with the speed and cruise control, similarly, after the workshop, after they had some training, their decision to not use those decreased, which is good. Their familiarity, so they almost 50% said they were not familiar with the speed and cruise controls, but after the workshop, that decreased. And liking to try, planning to try, increased in both of those. The braking and anti-rollover category, similar again. Before was greater than after with reasons why they did not want to use these. Their familiarity increased after they sat through the training, and then their willingness to try, their planning to try, those both increased. The fourth category was tire temperature and terrain. again, followed that same pattern. Before, there was more, greater percentages of people that had their reasons why they were not using these specific technologies, but then after that decreased, their familiarity increased with that reduction. Their willingness to try the new technologies increased after they had this training session. So the next two, we have a little more variation with them. It's something I want to point out. The familiarity for all of our 6 categories before was, the lack of familiarity was greater before than it was after, so that's good. Wanting to try it, liking to try it, that increased after they sat through our training sessions. For whatever reason, like looking at this example, they don't want to learn it. Before, there was a few % of people that said that, but then after the training, a greater percentage said that. But people that said they were confident without the features, 11 or 12% said that before, but then after, that reduced. So I don't know, this might have been towards the end of the session. They might have just been tired. As Renee was kind of describing, as we went through these iterations of the survey, how the data is being collected, that's something that we're going to look into to try to explain some of these discrepancies. So then lane and side assist, similar again with looking at not familiar. Before, that was 45%. Afterwards, that decreased, so that's great. And then their willingness to try and their plan to try both increased after the workshop. So here, the next 3 slides, what we've done is, so those previous ones we were looking specifically at the category. So now what we did was just all of their responses, looking at kind of their awareness. How many choices or how many selections did they say, I'm not familiar with most of these features? So the before here is the yellow. So, and you can see the after, how much reduced. There was almost an 83% reduction in I am not familiar with most of these features after sitting through the workshop and participating. So their awareness increased. Then their understanding, and to evaluate that, we looked at the selections that they made for reasons that I don't use these features. And this was kind of, actually, Renee, I'm not sure if, this was from the survey, those choices that they were able to make. So I just included it here so you could see. So before versus after, there was a 53% reduction in people selecting, oh, I don't use these features for whatever reason. So the training that we gave them, the information that they took from it, was able to reduce reasons why they might not use it in the future. And then their acceptance, this was good to see also. We looked at when they selected, I'm familiar with these features and I would like to try to use them. Before versus after, so a 473% increase, yes. So, and Renee kind of gave a little bit of like or commentary about the way people were reacting in the conversations that were going on. And I want to say it was very kind of comfortable and organic, and people were giving lots of commentaries as they were going through these things. These comments are specifically on the survey. We gave them an area where they could write their comments. This is just a selection that we took. There were some positive ones, some negative ones. This first one, this information was helpful and professionally presented. It gave me an insight into what level of safety features I would like in the future. Great features, interesting and helpful, very helpful. I need a newer car, so people were getting excited when they were learning about these technologies. Some of the negative ones, people saying they need more exposure to recognize these. Talked about if it breaks, who's going to fix it. There was also discussion, and there was a lot of discussion, but one person actually wrote it. It's like a political situation, so that was some of the commentary that was happening. People were talking about inaccuracies, needing more instructions, confusion. There was also a lot of talk, but again, there was two. You don't deserve to drive. The drivers we should focus on being better drivers and less dependent on the features. Yes.
What do they mean by inaccurate?
The technology, yes, so that it might not respond correctly or tell you the correct thing to do. So, and that's, these workshops are great, and they, as much as you try to keep them consistent in the information that you're communicating, if one person asks you one question, it can take the amount of information and the kind of information that gets communicated is different to that kind of population. But, but a lot of, I found almost in every location that I went to, so all three of us did go to do these surveys, so we all have a little bit different kind of experiences, but every single location that I went to, there was some discussion that would come up about these things aren't going to tell you the exact right thing to do. And, we talked about how, like the pavement markings, that's part of the technology that your vehicle is using to pick up, and that's how it knows if you're going into a different lane. If you are on a rural road that doesn't have that, you're not going to have that. So I think something that we kept reiterating to people, because there was also a lot of discussion with these things are going to take over, they're going to drive for me, and we kept saying, no, you are in charge of your vehicle. But these technologies are really great, so if you understand how to use them, it will make you an even better driver. And we talked about, this is something that Dr. Molnar said earlier with the independence and how older people want to maintain that as long as they can. And so we kept saying, if you embrace these things, this will increase your independence for even longer, and to not be afraid of the inaccuracies. And just to try to understand, how these technologies work and what you can expect them to do. Yes?
You kind of led into my question, but I was just curious if there was any difference in acceptance for features that had the word assist versus automatic or automated. I know there was a comment earlier about automated parking was a big one that they didn't like. And I was curious if some of the features were more accepted when they said assist.
Yeah.
Just helping you. I don't know. Did you notice anything?
And we didn't take it that specific yet, but that is something with our data that we can look into. So, and actually in the report that we're pulling together. And Renee, do you have a comment to that?
You could see in the parking one that a lot less people were accepting of that, so I think that one was really highlighted in that. But as far as diving down, that still remains to be done.
Would either of you two want to make any comments about like what you heard from the participants?
I do want to say that I have backed into a pole using the backup camera, so it was hard for me to refute the comments about the inaccuracies, but I did continue to reiterate, but also I would have backed into the pole anyway, probably, and that 94% of crashes are due to human error, and even if they are inaccurate, it's still better than me driving.
Okay, yes.
Was there a lot of conversation around data security? The news has done a really good job of creating a lot of fear in customers around their data, or I forget which OEM just shut down their infotainment system on their vehicles because they were able to have, college kids hack into them and control them remotely. And so cybersecurity is a huge issue, and you get that into the political realm.
Yes.
Noted, and then trying to get control of the conversation after that's really hard. Did that come up when the cybersecurity component, or was that just kind of like over their head?
No, some people were talking about that. Dr. Yi, did you want to comment about that?
My experience is that maybe this is the second stage. So far, most of them are still concerned about the basics. Okay, they're hesitating, they're trying to understand. That's a very good question. Maybe they will come up. Once they know more, right? Hey, what if something goes wrong? Good question.
Well, and we did, talk about a lot of these technologies are just within your vehicle. They are just sensing how you're driving, and then also kind of the infrastructure that is right around you. Like I was saying with the paint, it's looking for reflectivity that's in that. So explaining it like that kind of reduced, I think, the apprehension or, the big brother kind of thing happening that they were afraid of. Yes, yes. And I think we kept saying, look at these resources. Renee, she pointed out as well, like a lot of people are not excited to go online and go on these websites and stuff. But, we showed them that it was there. We did talk about other, I said, go see your dealer. These people sold you this car, most of them, well, I don't know. They should tell you how these things work. Make them tell you. And and this is something else actually on the next slide. It's something with our conclusions with, this, we don't know, this unknown percentage who don't care to have the education. I mean, these people came because they wanted to learn. So I think, we encouraged them, we gave them some resources. We have centers saying, oh, please come back for your next stage of research. So they're wanting to get the information. And I had at least half of the locations I went to, the administrators approached me and said, whatever you're doing next, come back because we want to keep this going. So I do think that once you kind of plant this seed, they're going to go out and look for it. And anything we can do, we gave copies of the icons on little sheets, and they were so happy to have that. So whatever we can do to help this, and I'm thinking about the keynote, and we need to talk to these people, and that's why that positive and negative comment we were saying, put this down, get your thoughts out, because we will pass this on to powers that be. People will see what we're saying, what you're saying, and I gave them my email. He said, contact me in the future if you think of things that you want to, because we want to keep this conversation going. And I loved what Kristen was saying, like we really need to get out and hear what people are saying. So I think this has been a great experience for us, getting out into the community. And actually, and I guess I can kind of close out, it's almost time, but and Dr. Yee, I don't know if you want to talk about this, our next phase of research, because these drivers are saying they want to get into these vehicles and see these things more, and how can we do simulations? So I'll pass it on to you, Dr. Yee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The possibilities, of course, there. I mean, whether how much people really trust, I think it takes time. Even for myself, my vehicle has lane tracking, blind spot detection, backup, detection. I really don't need that. I'm confident. I've been driving so many years. However, once I had that vehicle, a few years ago, is that a few years model, okay, I feel so relaxed. I'm serious. And gradually, I cannot rely on it. Although I really, if I drive older vehicles for so many years, I'm just turning my head back more often, but now I feel really cannot rely on that because I have another vehicle. Okay, it's an older vehicle, does not have that feature. So when I get to the other vehicle, I don't feel as comfortable, So this is like experience will start to help you build the confidence. But those definitely, how reliable is issues. What is that? This is interesting. Any other question? All right. Okay. Thank you. You want to say something? No. Thank you very much.